flyers. I'm the VP of Bank of China and the representative for the LAMBA Executive Committee. And today we are so lucky to have you guys here. And thanks Daniel for this sharing platform. Actually, I was thinking about this topic when the other day I saw a Twitter from Zuckerberg. Actually, he posted a picture with the comment saying that apparently the lockdown is 2 haircuts long. Well, at that moment, I realized that this probably gonna be a new normal. And so we have this panel here. We not only discuss about the rules of thumb of leadership, we'll also discuss about how to lead your team effectively during and after COVID-19. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this panelist and host here. And we have Jun, who is the head of R&D of Thermo Fisher Scientific. And what I heard from Daniel is that actually Jun is the only student who took all these soft skills classes in Wharton and got really excellent credits. And I personally know Jennifer a lot. And what you don't know maybe is Jennifer is actually the role model for many Sloanists. She represented the Sloan Fellow to toast in this ceremony of their graduation. So comparing with representing equally excellent and obstinate peers, being the executive for JP Morgan or BMO might be much easier. And Daniel, I think the most valuable part for him is actually he is really like sharing. And also congrats to Daniel about your graduation from Wharton this year. Okay, without further ado, let's get down to the business. I'm gonna hand it over to Jun first. Jun, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Jun.
Okay, great. Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself just now. Hey, thank you, Jessie, for the introduction, and thank you for bumping me up as the head of Thermo Fisher R&D. But actually, still there's some way to go. I'm a director of R&D at Thermo Fisher right now. Well, so thank you very much for inviting me, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So let me share my screen so we can get started. No, this is not right. Sorry, what do you guys see? There's some problem.
No, we can see it.
What do you see?
We can see the slides. Where'd you start?
Okay. Something weird on my computer, sorry. We actually just had a dry run.
Yep.
Okay, what do you guys see? Do you see the?
We see the full screen. We see the full screen of leading teams. First slide of your deck.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay. All right, then let's get started. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about how to lead teams, or more practical, why my team sucks and what we can do about it. So first of all, if a team suck, is it because the boss wanted to suck, or it's hard to imagine the boss here, let's say on the bottom left, can keep the team motivated. Right? Is a team managed by fear or by compassion? Right? Leadership is not appointed, but it's earned. So people choose who they want to follow. So in my book, a good boss is a servant leader that serves and cares about their people. So before we dive into leading teams, so let's spend a minute on how to be a servant leader. So there are 4 simple components of being a servant leader, in my opinion. So one is to be humble. So for a long time, we like our leaders to be heroes, and because we think they know better, right? But instead, a servant leader is transparent and shares relevant information. We will say that we're smart, we work hard, but we don't have all the answers, and we need a lot of help from you. So this is really about self-awareness. We need to know our own limitations and be upfront about them. And second one is to be open. Be the explainer in chief, right? Things that the leader deal with are very complex. To bring everyone on board, we need to be able to explain the complex world to lots of people, right? In a simple but not simplistic way. If people don't know what you're talking about, or they don't believe what you're saying, then how are they going to join you on a journey, right? And third is to be curious. I have some information, so do others, right? And when people disagree with me, they could have pure motives. So what are those? Differences are good, right? There are opportunities for learning. We don't have all the answers, so involve our team and charging forward with everyone together on the journey. And the last one is to be compassionate. Lead from within. Don't treat your people as a machine that can maximize your profits, right? So encourage them to see your vision and empower them to pursue the greater purpose that you can lead them to achieve. So George Merck is a founder of Merck Pharmaceutical. This quote doesn't seem to fit the theme, but let's read it anyway. We try to remember the medicine is for the patient. We try never to forget that medicine is for the people. It's not for profits. The profits follow, and if we remember that, they have never failed to appear. And the better we have remembered it, the larger they have been. So what he's saying that's applicable to all of us is, when deciding on the job, is it because I'm truly passionate about the impact I can make at the job? Or is it because the money or the status or something? Right? Our work is going to feel a large part of our life, and it can be really hard. Being a leader, especially so, right? Unless you have a lot of passion about what you do, you're going to give up at some point. And because extrinsic rewards don't last. You will have the energy and perseverance to keep you going when you are passionate about being a servant leader and taking care of your people. So once you find your passion, and you will find a way to be great at it. Now let's talk about the team. So the most obvious goal that teams exist is to serve clients. The team should satisfy the clients, and they are anyone who receive or use the output of the team. And beyond this basic goal, we leaders need to design the team in a way that while carrying out the work, they all learn and get better at working together interdependently. And the group experience should also contribute to learning and personal well-being of each individual member. So we have served the clients, improve as a team, and improve each individual. So for the next 15 minutes, I will give you an overview of the 5 conditions to build and lead a team by Richard Hackman. So because every team is completely different, so it's not really practical to have a general tactics of what to do, but rather this gives you a framework on how and why. So this can be a bit dry, but I'll try to make it palatable. So one important thing to do is to try to relate what we talk about here with your team or the teams you were on. So think about what is the worst team you have been on and what made it so bad, So the first condition is being a real team. So I think we can all agree that LA Lakers is a team. And we should all agree that a bunch of random people waiting for a traffic light to change is not a team. So even though they have a common goal at that moment, right? So what separates a team from a collection of people? So a team is a group of people who are collectively accountable for something. Let it be a product, service, or data. They should be dependent upon one another to deliver the result, right? And the team needs to be bounded as well. It should be clear who is on the team and who's not. And if it's not clear, then the members won't have a consistent sense of belonging. And they don't think that I'm part of the team, and they will get caught up very easily in their other parts of the work. But a team shouldn't be overbounded either. So that means that a team is closed off to its environment and is siloed. So stability is also important. So for those who are married, let's say, it's probably very clear that it takes years to really learn how to live with their spouse, right? So same with being on a team. It takes time to gel as a team. For instance, in the airline industry, 73% of the incidents occurred on the crew's first day, right? It makes sense because they didn't have the chance to learn how they can work together, operate as a team before they flew. So it's often a good thing to have some ambiguity in teamwork because it leaves room for the team to bring their flavor. But regarding authority, it needs to be very clear. So there are 4 functions that need to be executed, right? Setting overall direction, designing the team and its organizational context, managing the process, progress, and of course, executing the tasks. So manager-led teams have the managers manage and the workers work. The functions are completely separated. And the next 2, so not only the workers executing the task, they're also responsible for managing their own performance or also modify their team's design. So this is probably what we see more common than not in a good team. And in a self-governing team, then the team is in charge of everything, all the aspects. So think about, for example, the board of directors, I guess, is a good example of self-governing team. So these 4 types of teams have vastly different authority, and what they need to and can do are vastly different. So there's no one size fits all. As a team lead, you need to consider carefully who is in the best position to handle these functions and define clearly what the team is responsible for. Right? So think about the teams you've been on. Where do they fall? So the second condition is compelling direction, right? It's not possible to have the team self-manage unless someone in authority sets the direction. It can be the team lead, in the example of board of director, or it can be someone in the management, right? Because a clear and shared sense of purpose helps the team members to sort from many options how they could move forward. So the direction needs to be challenging, needs to be clear, needs to be consequential. Challenging because it can energize the team members and motivate them to perform. Right? A good rule of thumb is design work to have a 50-50 chance of succeeding. If it's too high, then it's more about going through the motion. And if it's too low, then it doesn't seem like we can get there. So why even try? And the direction needs to be clear. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It orients what the strategy the team needs to form to get to the goal. And finally, it needs to be consequential. The teams need to know what they can do. They need to know what they do is important and will make an impact. And when it's a real team that has a collective purpose and in a consequential task, then we will not see that one person is struggling to get things done while the others are waiting and watching. So having a compelling direction for sure is key, right? But what should be specified? Should the direction be about the ultimate goal, or should it be how they supposed to pursue the goal? And so look at this two parameters and of specified ends and specified means. So we have a quadrant here. The easiest thing to do, certainly not the best, is just say, for example, make a best-selling product or create value. So we don't need to specify what in particular the success looks like, and we don't direct how to get there, right? So it really doesn't mean anything. So the team will do whatever they prefer personally, without a focus, so you can tell it's not going to go well. So the next easy thing is to specify what to do and how to do. So this is the bottom left quadrant. Then in this scenario, the team just need to mindlessly follow the instruction, right? Like assembly worker. So simply a pair of hands. So I think, it's safe to say that anyone intellectual will not enjoy this. When we put on paper, it looks so obvious that this is not what anyone should do. But really think about the teams you've been on and how many of them are actually doing this. So of course, the best is framed here. So it's, we specify ends, but not the means. So the team will be self-managed, right? So this is also the most difficult. This is because you need to provide, as a leader, provide the tools, the trainings, and also clearly identify, the outer limits, right, where the teams shouldn't cross. So they won't just ruthlessly, let's say, pragmatic and do something that could be ethically questionable, right? But you cannot be too specific, especially when it's a challenging goal with incentives. So everyone from China should know that what happened in the Great Leap Forward. And we said that we produced 100 times more food than we actually did, and 40 million people starved to death. So what we really want to do as a leader is to leave some fuzziness there, but make sure the team develop detailed images of what the end and what the success should look like. So there's a fine balance between, inviting chaos and endless standardization. What's really important in building the structure is to establish a good basic frame for the team. And you want to give the team plenty of room to mold for their circumstances. An analogy is like building a house. The designer doesn't anticipate exactly how you're going to use each room, and but rather give you a functioning house, and you can arrange your furniture any way you like. So the key here is to differentiate between crucial and unnecessary structural features. So there are three critical features, and they're the task design, norms, and composition. So on task design, so the goal is really to internally motivate the team members. At the end, what you want to get out is high performance, high satisfaction, low turnover. And you want the team to use a variety of their skills, and they know what they do is significant so that the work is meaningful. And you want to give them autonomy so that they're responsible and accountable. And equally important, they need to know the outcome of their work so they can learn and improve in the future with feedbacks. So the second is norm or culture, specify what behaviors are acceptable and what's not. So this is particularly important in my opinion, because without a proper guidance, the norm almost always becomes counterproductive, right? Because of human tendency that we want to seek harmony, and it's just simply easy to react to what comes to our way instead of being proactive. So Lynch has this excellent book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So here's a whole book distilled into a single picture. And without active guidance and putting the framework in place, the team usually looks like harmonious because of human nature that we want to avoid conflict. We just talked about it, but there can be a lot of problems underneath this surface. So lack of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoid accountability, and inattention to results. Fundamentally, it's because of lack of trust. And that's when the team is not willing to be vulnerable within the group. And they're not really genuinely open with one another. So this leads to fear of conflict, because without trust, they won't really have unfiltered debate, right, about one another's ideas. But they turn to guarded comments instead. So without having expressed their opinions and have meaningful debates, then it's hard for them to buy in and be committed to an idea that's not their own. And because of that, then they won't hold themselves accountable, let alone holding others accountable, which in turn leads to unsatisfactory results. Then about the team composition. So regarding size, the bigger is not always better. Several researchers show that the same result, that a group supposedly to have higher productivity when you add more people to it, right? Because each person can add something, right? But the group never performs at their potential level, right? That's because there's always process loss. Let it be, let's say, coordination problem or social loafing. There are always inefficiencies. So the actual productivity can decrease when there are too many people on a team. Brooks at IBM even came up with this Brooks law that just summarized what we said. So adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. So the ideal size is around 4 to 5 people. And when in doubt, having slightly fewer people actually leads to higher productivity. On the mix of a team, so we usually assume that the people who are familiar with one another get along better, right? But this kind of team doesn't typically perform well because they're short of the complementary skills and the resources to do the job well. So think about CEO and CFO. One's supposed to be adventurous, and one's supposed to be conservative, and they keep each other in check. So what we want is a balance between being too similar and being too different. And regarding the third component, the interpersonal skills. So, often we just simply assume that everyone know how to work in a group, but in fact, that some people are just not cut out to be team players. For those people, the tendency is simply, keep them at a safe distance so they cannot do harm, or put a strong leader there to keep things under control. So Heckman suggests to go with coaching first. One of the fundamental goals of a team is to enrich each individual member, right? Beyond serving clients and improving team as a whole. So only if coaching and peer coaching doesn't work, then we move to isolation or have a strong leader, right? Because if you choose to work around a person, then they're effectively dismissed from the team. So we talked about being a real team, compelling direction, and enabling structure. So you can think that these three conditions are a seed that they plant. And the supportive context and expert coaching that we touch upon are the soils that make it sprout and grow. So supportive context, reward system, information system, and education system. So rewards that the team members value will encourage them to do it again, right? But punishments are more likely to focus the team members' attention on how they can protect themselves. So we should have a reward system that recognizes good team performance and that will motivate them and also encourage them to think of us rather than me, right? So the focus is reward team performance so that they will gel as a team. And the information system is to provide the teams the data and information that they need to plan and execute their work. The education system should make training and technical assistance available, right, for any aspects of their work that they need. On coaching, so there are three aspects that determine how effective the team is. The amount of effort they put into the work, the strategy they employ to carry out the work, and the knowledge and skills that they apply to the work. And Heckman found that coaching should be well-timed to be effective. So at the beginning, when a team is formed, we should focus on the effort. The coaching style is more motivational, right? Prevent social loafing and boost the team's commitment. So the team leader helps the team to start working on their own. And at the midpoint, the style is consultative. It can be some natural breakpoints or low workload period. So that's when the coach can use this kind of time point to encourage the team to reflect on their work and what challenges they might face. And you want to reduce their reliance on routines and encourage them to think innovatively. And at the end, when the work don't end well, the human tendency is to spend energy to rationalize why the failure wasn't really their fault. And when the team did well, so celebration, of course, is important because it helps the internal motivation, right? But that's not enough. So what the leader will help is to help the team reflect and learn. The team should discuss how they would explain their performance level and help them align with the reality. Help the team to think, what did they do especially well and what they can improve on. People don't learn well when they're preoccupied and hurried. So the end is a great time to do that. So in the current situation, remote team becomes the norm. So I think Heckman's analysis still spot on, even though there seems to be quite a bit of difference, right? Like you have to learn technologies, right, in a remote working setting. And so how many of us can perfectly mute and unmute ourselves in a meeting? And there's also time zone difference, hierarchy, language barriers, especially for international teams. But what I want to point out a couple of things that the virtual teams are more vulnerable to than the physical team, which are shared identity and shared understanding. So in a remote team, people more tend to form subgroups based on location or who they talk most to, right? So why it matters is because we tend to view people in our subgroup as us and outside as others. and we often see others are worse than us. Right? That's just basic human psychology. So we negatively view people outside of our group and view the people, let's say LA, as better, working harder, more dedicated than a group in New York. And if the team has this kind of divided and unfounded opinions, how can they work well together? So now this goes to Lynch and his 5 dysfunctions, right? So there won't be trust in the team, and they won't have to debate on their opinions, and this will cascade to be a suite of problems. The second one is lack of shared understanding, or they don't have a common ground when they don't share the same information, and they don't share the same context. So what can happen? The teams doesn't communicate well, they miss information, they don't have a good understanding of what other people in the team know, and they will make mistakes and inefficient, and be inefficient, certainly. So my last slide, we talked about coaching at the beginning of our team is to motivate and help the team gel, right? In a virtual team, we can't just assume that the shared mindset will evolve over time. We need to work especially hard to develop a shared sense of identity and keep it going, right? So there are a lot of practical ways to do this. So think about, how you launch the team. Use video and not just talking or email. Right? Give a virtual tour of your home office. Schedule more frequent meetings. Make sure everyone is heard. Especially for those who are not really outspoken, make sure that we invite their input. So I think I will stop at this slide and move on to Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Jun. So Jennifer, you can come up to the share. Also, you're unmuted at this point, so go ahead and present. And we'll save all the questions to the end. We have a group of questions to ask all together. So Jennifer, you're up. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Great pleasure to meet everybody on the weekend. Let me see. Do you see my screen well? Does it come up?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, so let's jump into the topic, drive changes with the 3-dimensional leadership. I'll explain what I mean by this. But first of all, a very quick intro of myself. I've been working in banking industry mostly for 20 years. Started with the Ontario Teachers Pension as portfolio manager on a global tactical asset allocation, and moved to Citigroup, Merril Lynch, and JP Morgan. So so had a turn about my career at MIT, and after that, so I quit JP Morgan and started doing my blockchain startups for enterprises, and also working with many other advisory roles. So my career turns from serial into, I would say, slash careers. So the first part mostly is fin, and then it's tech. So for someone like me who has worked for so long, you have the fortune or misfortune to go through many crises. I lived through the entire 2001 dot-com bubble when we had a fully loaded portfolio on the short positions. When I was at Merrill, what happened, being acquired by Bank of America, and that was a whole fiasco of the Wall Street. And now we have COVID-19. So for many of you, this may be one of the first crises that you experience in your career, but sure, it's not going to be the last. And how to understand. For me, every crisis invites more opportunities that gives me different turns and twists. And I hope you can walk away every crisis not wasting for valuable takeaways. So one thing I did learn on the leadership, so today is not about fintech, is there's so much similarities across all these different organizations I've served. At the JP Morgan, I was a co-chair of the AADC, which is Analyst Associate Development Commission. And so one of the core mission is to how to recruit and develop the young leaders for the pipelines. And also when I came to MIT, I was on the Education Council. Similar challenges that I've faced through when I was advising on many different startups. So this is something I found a little bit more core that I'd like to share, within this compressed 20 minutes. So first of all, what is the leadership? I think Jun already gave us a very comprehensive intro about, leadership is not a boss. It's not about authority. Actually, it's quite the opposite. We wish we summon everybody and follow order to do the job. But in reality, this is what usually happens. We're all familiar with this parable, right? So we approach the same object, trying to accomplish a big elephant in the room from a different angle. And this is our understanding based on our own position, perspective, time, and location. To be sure, as a leader, we are probably one of the blind men as well. So how to get over that trap of knowledge to be able to have a higher degree of understanding about whole picture to motivate people? That is constantly the psychology or philosophy or management need to deal with. And that's becoming more urgent now because as we know, the organizations are becoming more flattening these days. And we have probably more distributed teams across different continents, different cities, and people are working from their homes. Even you're leading probably a team with all different nationalities and a cultural background. They don't necessarily understand each other. So one of the typical examples when I was at one of the junior time was you send out an email, you think it's well-crafted, really clearly articulated, and end up confusing a lot of people. And you just keep wondering why they are not getting what I'm sending out, right? It's so clear. You must have something, different to misunderstand my message. Either you are not up to the job, right? You are not competent to see the reality, or you have a secret agenda. In reality, both exist, but in most cases, that is even on face of all this potential hidden agenda or different lack of understanding, you have to unite everyone because you need to understand in the end, as we're all trying to figure out what is elephant in the room to get a job done. That's one thing. So how to deal with that? Particularly, I think many of you mentioned about a dotted line. You even don't have any authorities. I think Jun already articulated out that leadership, it's not about, surveillance. It's not about authority. And you will recognize as you grow older, actually, the career choice is not working for the name on the building. It's working for the name on the door. That's a leader you want to follow. In a situation like a framework like this, right, trying to get a goal or common goal, to be precise on that, accomplished, each of us as a leader, right, you need to have certain capabilities. You need to be capable doing the technical job, the spreadsheet, the PPT, the vision, the market, whatever we need to do. We need to know our stuff, that's for sure. And there are many success factors you need to include in your consideration. But most of all, what I find particularly that Chinese in America, that is slightly under underestimating the power is the perception. Perception of people about you. Perception of the team about you as a leader. Put in the way, if you manage a team, no matter it's just one intern, two interns, or it's like 50 people's team as you move up to the ladder to the management team. When you walk out the room, what would people describe about you? How would you describe yourself as a leader? How would you connect with them on what level? What value you stand for? The perception is extremely powerful. As we probably learned, there are many different theories go about this, thinking hard and thinking fast and slow, and people are talking about hot system, cold system. People may forget about what you do long time, but they know how you make them feel forever. I'll give you one example, how powerful it was. After, actually it's last year when I was going to Singapore at one time, I wrote out one very quick email to one colleague I worked probably when I was at Merril Lynch, or early years of JP Morgan, sorry. That was 9 years ago. And we barely probably had overlap about a year or two, and she moved on to Standard Chartered Bank. So I was sending an email to her saying, hey, I'm coming by Singapore next week. Do you have time to have a coffee and catch up? And she was a global head of the transaction banking at Standard Chartered Bank. And she just immediately replied to my email and saying, hey, so glad to hear from you finally. And I'm not in town, unfortunately, next week, but I can put my team to meet you, right? You are in blockchain. So let me put my team to work with you. So in that first trip to Singapore, I was meeting 4 global heads of some business. Global head of, documentation, digital transformation, all this stuff. I was almost like, where does this come from? And she was not even in town in the office, the only one that knew me barely from many years ago. And she put her senior team in the hands of me to meet and discuss. And that ended up become a pitch meeting rather than a coffee. So when we're talking about leadership, right, each of us, you see yourself as a journey of cultivating your career experience and leadership. When we talk about in the end, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. And the who you know, that is a trust and a network you are building around you. So in the end, so on my second trip to Singapore, I had a chance to finally meet my colleague. I don't remember like why I deserve such a treatment. So I asked her, and she was saying, like that time, I just enjoy working with you. Like everything you did, you make it very high standards, and I trust you. So that in the end, right, leadership is what? Leadership is about people's perception you, about the confidence in you, that you like their interest in your heart, and take them to the common goal that they can prosper, they can succeed. That is what I understand about, generosity and humility. It's not about me, boss. It's about servicing others, helping them to prosper. And if people get a taste of that, and you cannot fake it, right? In a daily in, daily out in the office space, you cannot fake it forever. People immediately get the point, even on small encounters, and they will take that away about perception about you, and that'll walk a very, very long way. So how we keep it in practice? Let's give it an example. As a junior leader, well, as someone, we just come into career, right? So first of all, we want to get our task done and make it beautiful. And then we're given a team to manage, small at the beginning and gradually bigger and bigger. And then you still have your boss to manage. Managing up is never to be underestimated in the entire picture, and also your peers. The peer may be your boss one day, the peer may be your subordinates one day. And this is what we call managing in 3D way. Never think of managing your team as one-dimensional game. Think of how you add value to them, how you understand the big picture you take them towards. Think of that elephant picture, right? So sometimes I hearing some team members complaining to me, some of my members don't listen to me, particularly when there's a boring job, they don't want to do it, they don't take negative feedback. That's all possible, but think of the way. They are rejecting your leadership literally because of their rejecting what could benefit for them to accomplish, right? These could be all interrelational. As a leader, if you're popular in the eyes of your boss, if you're popular within your peers, it's very hard for your team to disregard you. Because everybody knows, they check on the balance or the trust around you and figure out what the perception you have. So really managing in 3D is requiring a change of mindset. We used to focus on task. And when we get a team, we're still focusing on the task, how we split the job and conquer, get the task done, then that'll be wrong. When you are leading a team below you, you need to think from not the task, but the people doing the task. So it's like, are you really planning and distributing the work so that entire team prosper? Do you understand their interest and value enough to make them motivated? And have you found the optimal mix of role and responsibilities to keep them in check? Have you given enough creativity, room for creativity and ownership for them to feel proud of what they do? In the end, trust the company we're working for. They have done their diligence to recruit best people we can. And I would say there's no bad member, there's only bad boss. And to complicate the picture, it's not you have solid lines, you have a lot of dotted lines, right? So I used to manage, some of the major deals was three teams of lawyers from 5 departments, and none of them reporting to me. And you need to get them all together to get one, 10 billion syndication loan done in a week. How could that be possible? It's all about how you're rallying people around you to motivate, connect, and influence them in a way they will act in your vision to do the things that you think the best for them, not for me. Okay, so when it comes to a quick recap of this, it's like your leadership signature. All we talk about is a perception, right? It's actually the tip of the iceberg. Jun used this. I think everybody loves iceberg picture because of the shows the complexity of the issues. What is your leadership signature? I think that is probably one as I hope you can take away to write down 3 things, what you see yourself really are. And would that be consistent with what your subordinates or what your team member sees you? And would that be the same as your boss sees you or your peer sees you? Can you summarize that even in 2 words? What is your leadership signature? In the end, that comes to your branding, right? So when we talk about branding is a collection of perceptions people have about you in a consistent way. And in the angle of the users, not in you, in the angle of the users. And this tip, maybe we can summarize a guy, hey, he's a nice guy, or he's a very capable guy, or whatever. But below this, there's a huge amount of, attributes you have worked hard on. It's about your value, integrity, your experience, your knowledge, your standards, your personality, your confidence, your temperament. On the end, it's all on the surface on the end. Most people in the organization don't know you. Like 99% of people have no opportunity to know you in deep level. They know you probably by just a few words, by a few encounters, that's all. So that tip really becomes the symbol or signature because how you recognize and that penetrate that feeling deeply when you come to lead a new team, how they perceive you immediately, that we call the first impression on the first job or first task will be very, very important for the foundation of leadership. So to summarize very quickly, your accountability as a manager, right? So first of all, there's a new entire set of skills we all need to hone continuously. How to do the planning, how to do the job design, based on people, not based on you as a manager's perspective, right? How to select people to fit the role, and how to measure the performance, how to give the feedback, particularly tough ones, the negative ones, without being rejected, and how to coach them. Each of the subjects can be an area of expertise or training on its own, but these skills, keep in mind, right, that keep you continuing to improve as a manager on a fundamental level. And second is just simply allocate time, right, for them, and not just for your team, right, not just for the people below you, people around you, your peers, your dotted peers, your boss, like dotted lines, with everyone to gather that perception about you, the feedback on you. And in the end, bottom lines, you just cannot work as A producer and C manager and being paid or promoted as A manager. In the end, you are responsible as a manager. People follow you because they want to follow your value, right? You are responsible for the culture that exists in the team. Do you put always first-class standards, first-class quality? Would you tolerate the sloppiness? Would you be fair and firm? All these values you impose, people will learn from you, right? In the end, people are not quitting. Normally, people are not quitting their companies. They are quitting their managers. How to be a manager? Well, I had the experience of working for many good managers as well as extremely challenging managers. And to remember one thing, it's sole responsibility of you or ourselves to have a good relationship with our manager. And at least one takeaway is that if you have worked with any bad managers, you know how you should not behave to be like that for your team, but managing as a 3D way rather than just one way, thinking you are the leader for your subordinates. So in the end, we talk about the change, or the title is about the drive change. I think that means say different things for different people, but in the end, what exactly your personal goal as a future leader? Even now you are seeing yourself as a manager, look out like 20 years down the road. What is your major takeaway from these changes? As we all know, right, the world will no longer be the same. We're talking about potentially deglobalization or regionalization. We're talking about potentially deflation, the digitalization. What does that mean? How you can take the team to prosper together. So without further ado, I'll just stop here and maybe leave more time for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. And then June and Jessie, you can go ahead and turn back your camera and also enable your sound. So we have a little quick panel discussion. So first of all, appreciate Jennifer and Jun for presenting this topic to us. And you guys invest a lot of time. So I think just we kind of broke up the question into 4 separate sections. So first part, I would like to focus on the portion about how to become a leader, right? So mostly for for junior managers, or for maybe like junior team members, maybe like a lead, to step into the managerial position. What are the specific things you had to do when you had no direct reports, right? How do you demonstrate leadership? So I guess the question is, what are the pathways to develop leadership? And June, you read through the whole Hackman's book, from the Wharton class. Like, is there any advice coming from the book, or maybe coming from your personal experience about taking that first baby step?
Okay. You're talking to me?
Oh, sorry. I think I was talking to Jun, but he's muted. But let me
sure.
unmute him. Okay, so it should work now.
Okay, I think now.
sorry about that. Yeah.
I couldn't unmute myself. All right. So I think Jennifer actually said it really well. It's really about influence, but not really, directly having management experience to become a manager, right? So, for instance, when I hire someone, so I don't look at that person if that person will fit to the exact job, or rather, if that person has potential to move up, at least 1 or 2 level, right? So that means, a lot of them is really about, what that person could do, right? So to answer the how to become a manager without direct supervisory experience. So I think there are 2 things. So one is, what kind of management skill that you can demonstrate even without direct report, right? Second one is really leadership. So because being a good manager is really about leading and managing people, right? So on the management front, for instance, we can show that, you manage yourself very well. You manage your work, your time very well, right? So this is about good execution and do things right. So on the leadership front, Jennifer talked about influence. So, I'm a big advocate for this as well. So using your positional power, let's say your user title, that's very expensive. So I think any good leader, unless absolutely necessary, will try to use this non-positional influence. So that put everyone on the same place, right? So non-positional influence. So for instance, help peers, your boss, by do what you can to help them, or asking the right questions, right? And look at the big picture and do the right thing, right? To to give with discipline, right? And of course, I think for a good leader, very important point is to be upbeat and inspirational. So those quality, I think, is what people, the high manager will look at and decide if this person is worth a try to be a manager. So I guess that's my take.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add? So first, I appreciate Jun for I think that perspective. But from your banking experience, yeah.
I think that is very practical question, right? So I think easy way to do that is put yourself in the shoes of your manager. Most of us just feel very comfortable to play ourselves, right? But try to move out of your comfort zone. Think from the views from your manager. What is on his mind, or what you see potentially on his mind? What is he worried about? And there's anything you can do to share from some angle on that pains or concerns, any way you can add value. And talk to your manager about that, how you see that situation. And people appreciate that. And for any great ideas, like I have many chances people approach to me talking about something totally not in his day-to-day job and saying, this is how I see what you're worried, but that may be helpful to do this way or try this way. And that'll give them chance to lead, initiate something. Leadership is not about the title first. It's about your actually leading, right? So again, we're talking about the 3D leadership. If you want to be a leader, just act like a leader first. We once had a very junior manager, actually we're doing a deal, investment banking deal. And he is the juniorest of all, but putting all the managing directors, executive directors around him, like he give us directions where to stage and when to call clients and what to say, because he spends time with clients. And we all know clients trust him. So with that trust from the clients, we trust him. And he being the junior person guiding all the senior managers for that single transaction. I'll just give you an example like this, right? Leadership is how you immerse yourself, put in the zones that are beyond your day-to-day responsibilities. And that is very possible. When you do that once, twice, and 3 times, naturally, you'll be recognized. And your perception, people's perception about you being a leader will be completely different. And you will be promoted as a leader. Manager, put this way.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. That's super helpful. So I think just kind of tag along with that 3D leadership or 3D way, managing 3D way that you mentioned. I think I really agree with the change of mindset, task to people doing the task. So reflecting back about this managing up perspective, I think touched briefly about, junior or maybe a senior getting to the manager positions. But if you're the manager already, or if you're the director or, whatever managerial title, how do you manage up specifically, for your boss? Any great examples that you had from the banking or from your current, well, not now, but from the past experience?
Well, as a subordinate, right? So managing up is probably the most important thing as a manager. Sorry to say that, but because we assume the manager being a manager because they have the upper view about how organization goes. And the more views you get from him, the more resources you can potentially earn for your team as well. So everybody will feel like they are on the right track. So managing up is not particularly about perception or licking the shoes for the manager. It's about helping the managers. One major thing I would say, just really talk to your managers what in his minds. One practical tips maybe I can share with you guys. In my last 15 years of careers, I never worked in the same office, so not even in the same region with my manager. So because, I think nowadays it's more of the case, I work in Hong Kong, my manager in New York, or something like that. And put up regular meetings with your manager, regular, probably 30 minutes catch-up time every week. Particularly, I think that's valid now with a remote working from your office. It's so easy for you to just get, into the flow, day-to-day flows, the task update, without really talking about what's in his minds, what's on your minds. And just don't underestimate how much managers on the top will appreciate saying, hey, I want to schedule 30 minutes a week just to give you my perspective, how I see the work goes every week, right? Maybe 30 minutes too much. If you don't feel confident, just ask for 10 to 15 minutes. And in that meeting, don't talk about what you would talk in the meeting room, right? Share deep views. You only feel comfortable about how you see your work and how you feel about your team, right? Is there any way I can make person A better fit for the job B, and asking for advice, right? And eventually you appreciate how your manager approaches this problem, and you understand his value and his thinking. What is, and by the way, you can just say, is there anything I can do for you? And what is the whole, mission for what we're doing that can help you more? And just be a little bit more proactive. And, put this way, I think that I understand my manager way more in that 30 minutes catch up than any other 6 hours day-to-day work in the office. But that is the power of understanding people on a personal level. That's very important on the personal level rather than a job level. I would do that with my manager. I would do that with my team because I see the power and I want to make that available for your team as well, to understand them at the personal level as well. And same for you with the peers. If they are sort of in the dotted lines, you feel very important to the task you need to rally together. Understand people on the personal level by all means. That is only, I think that is the secret weapon of managing up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. And I think one of the very popular questions coming from the channel, and I thought you touched it briefly about managing up as well, is once you're in the manager role, let's say you're from the banking, you're the VP already, and how did you move to the next step? The executive director, the directors. You mentioned you have the 30 minutes, but everyone had that 30 minutes with their boss too, right? So how do you stand out during that session? And then Jun, also for you, like, from manager to directors, in the tech companies, what are the specific things that you did to elevate you to the more of an executive rank?
Jennifer, you want to start? You want me to?
Maybe Jun, you come first. I'll do the next.
Okay. So I think one is you need to have a sponsor, right? So the sponsor, I would say at least 2 levels up than where you are. So and they will be, let's say, they can be a mentor, but they need to be a strong advocate when the opportunity comes. So what I think, how do you get a sponsor like that, and how do you have good exposure so that when the promotion opportunity comes, you will be chosen. So one is this pie model, let's say. So performance, image, and exposure. So I think Jennifer actually touched upon all of them. Right? So performance, of course you have to perform well, being an individual and being a manager, right? So this has become like, such a table stake when you become a senior manager that there's almost no differentiation, right? So I would say that this performance piece maybe account for, let's say, 10% of how much people, above you will look at. Image, and Jennifer talked about, it's really how you want people to perceive you, right? So this is very important, right? So from how you dress to how you talk, how you treat people, right? So really, what people think about you, that is you, rather than, what you do or what you know. And exposure, similar, right? So if people don't know about you, they will, never give you a promotion, right? So, so that's the pie. And moving up, so I would say, managing up sideways and managing down. So my go-to tool is being allocentric. So basically being in other people's shoes. So you have a lot of stakeholders, right? So those stakeholders could be, for sure your boss, right? And, your 2 level up sponsor, and some of your peers, and, your direct reports. And that's just at work, right? So if you want to be a good leader, then you really need a strong support from your, friends and family, from your husband and wife. So how do you get that support? So one thing I strongly encourage everyone to do is to have an open conversation with everyone who's important to you, right? So very often, what I found is what I think that they expect of me, and actually what they actually expect of me is very different. So even with my wife that we have married for 10 plus years, sometimes it's just very hard to be aligned without clear communication. I think that's where Jennifer said about the 30 minutes personal conversation, just bring everything on the table, right? So a very simple example, while I was at Wharton, and I also moved to my new job at Thermo Fisher. So the amount of work and study that I had to do was just, humongous. And I was just paranoid that I couldn't spend much time with the family. But when I talked to my wife, she was very comfortable the amount of time I spent. But what she really wanted was that during a weekend that, the family can be like a family, we'll go out to have fun. And what ended up to be was, she would drive to wherever destination we want to go, and I could study or, work in a car. And once we get there, then, I put down the computer and we have fun as a family. So, this is really about like knowing what people expect of you, of course, and also knowing what let your stakeholders know what you expect of them so that they can help you. So let's say promotion. And if let's say if you want to move to a different division, right, or different function, this kind of thing, if you don't tell your stakeholder, don't tell your boss, your sponsors, they will not know, right? So open conversation really helps in all fronts.
All right, thank you. Jennifer, your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I was reading on WeChat. Actually, I saw a lot of questions, excellent questions. Maybe I can answer one of them. Actually, I see quite many asking about a bad boss. Sounds like pretty serious issue for a lot of people. I just jump into address that, right? So how to manage a difficult bad boss and what's the time to quit your boss if is something really critical. Maybe I can share some of my experience on that. So when we see bad boss, normally because we, sometimes they are jerk, right? So there are a lot of people like that. We don't see their value eye to eye. They take too much credits that they don't deserve. They order and they give nonsensical, instructions, and they take a position not because of capability, but because of other relationship, whatever reasons. But think of this way, right? You can make that position, the higher level position, must be there done something right. We're talking about that blind man elephant picture first, right? What is something you don't really know well? What is his secret sauce of skills that you don't really know well first, right? I once had 2 very bad managers. I tell you, that made me really even hate to get up in the morning at one point. But this is one thing I learned so much. Good managers helped me grow, but these 2 bad managers made me grow way more than the good managers, because I keep constantly scrutinizing myself and working on every single sentence when I talk to him, right? Particularly when there was a bad manager, or not say bad, but he is extremely sort of insecure. Normally people are insecure because of these factors we just mentioned. They are not doing their job, and they're trying to be hard when they are, have the job security worries. Then find out what exactly can make him feel better, what exactly can make him work for you. I know this is hard, but this is number 1 principles, that connect with him on one thing before you move on. If you are not too sure, even how to connect with your boss on one thing, the bad boss, try to find it out. Find out by talking to his colleagues, prior colleagues, other bosses, one thing that you can give and connect from there. And there's a general sense about how to give negative feedback, because whatever you're gonna say, probably it's gonna offend him anyway. The general feedback to your peers, to your dotted lines, right? So to your bad performers in the team, how to make them understand. There are 2 principles. Number 1, all these different opinions only works if they accept them. Number 1. 2, they lead to action. I never try to be friends with my bad boss, but I want him to be aligned on the action, which is hopefully you can make argument that action helps him as well, not help you, right? It's much easier to justify the action rather than the value in that circumstance. That's the same for you to give negative feedback to whoever that is you don't have influence as well. Show your respect. You are not trying to dismiss anybody. You are not trying to humiliate anyone. You're just saying, hey, I have this different consideration that may help, right? This is a common agenda we want to accomplish. How do you think about that? Give him that option. And it comes to, when you are quitting your job, right? So I did have that experience, when I was at Citigroup, and actually this is the bank I worked the sort of the shortest time. And put in this way, you are who you are. You don't have to bend yourself. This is what we call authenticity, right? authentically trying to understand and help other people. But there are some people that for whatever reason, they cannot do the job. It's not the end of the world. What happened was, my boss still in that denial mode with me, but there's another boss who that time moved from Citigroup to Merrill Lynch. And when he was telling me later, when he settled down, the first thing he picked up the phone and called me, Jennifer, come over to help me to run China. Right? It's not that one single person can set your path, your destination. In an organization, especially when the organization is getting flatter, you are recognized for the value you've done for people, not just for that person. And even that one person doesn't really get you, in the good spot, other people will help you. And that is what, examples we talk about, my early examples about the Standard Chartered lady and this lady. When you move along your career, hopefully except the first job interview you had, you need to have out of campus, right? From MBA to whatever job you're gonna land. Hopefully the ideal situation is you never have to go to the website looking for a job again. Because if you're good enough, there are always people want to have you to be in that team. And that is eventually what happened with my entire career. And because of that advantage, you work for someone that know you before you even start a job. That gives you a great amount of trust in the foundation to fly. In the end, remember what I said earlier, the career choice is to work for the name on the door, not for the name on the building. And hopefully you can be the leader. Like whenever you move to somewhere, people want to follow you saying, can I join your team? And that is when you demonstrate your value for your boss and for your team as well. And I see them all together because remember that 3D thing, you are the leader in single task, including your boss. You have to tell your boss what to do.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. And I think I want to move on to the next section about more of a golden rule for leading a team. And also kind of back to you, Jen, you tend to talk about, when you're leading the team, it's not about me, it's about servicing to others, right? And helping them prosper. So put that into context. How would you help to build trustworthiness and also build that psychological safety within the team? And how to get to know your team when people only want to show their partial self? And so if you can get him started on that, and then maybe Jun, you can touch on that as well. Oh, anyone can start.
Sorry, what's the question again?
So question is, how do you get your team when people only want to show their partial self, like basically they're kind of concealing their personal life, their psychological barriers, their emotions, especially in this COVID-19 phase, right, where everyone's so far apart. And how do you build a trustworthiness, right? Also establish that trust when we're so far away.
Okay, maybe I can kickstart this one, and Jun, you can add on. People don't want to show themselves, expose themselves. That's very natural, right? You cannot force on that. But a lot of reasons is they don't feel secure to share. They fear they get judged. They fear they get penalized. And what's the upside for me to share, to open up to you? How should I trust you? One way once I did some small exercise that helped a lot of, difficult situations, maybe I can share with that one example. Again, it's about understanding people on a personal level, not about the job, right? It's about the people. The interesting exercise we did was, I used to manage a very geopolitically diverse team from Beijing, Shanghai, Singapore, and now I'm based in Boston, but team all the way in China and Singapore as well. So what we do is, and most of them don't have the opportunity to work with each other, is we, on weekly meetings, instead of just jumping right into this, the business update, whatever, we take 10 to 15 minutes to a small personal exercise that we ask each member of the team to share what is the biggest thing on his mind that week. Just 10 minutes. So we heard a lot of very interesting questions. One time was people saying, oh, I was so afraid of missing the deadline. Well, that was before the COVID. So another person, this morning I was trying to get an Uber, I couldn't catch on it. I was so afraid I'm late. And everybody look around each other and saying, me too, right? So, and for that day, we talked about 10 minutes how to deal with late situation. I said, me too as well. Like, what if I walk into the office and late and every member is staring at me, right? So we talk about what can we do in that situation, and I feel suddenly everybody feel like so relaxed. And another chance, there was a girl talking about, what is, suddenly this morning I was thinking about, that's for her to initiate that week's talk about, if I want to love again, do I want to be a girl again? I see boys have so many advantages. So it's kind of so interesting. You don't make it a personal on that individual person, but something hovering in her mind or in his mind at that particular moment, just share that with the team. And we found out, right? And that is such ice-breaking moment every week. After one round, at that time we have 6 teams, as a small team, 6 members sharing 1 leading questions a week. They're taking turns to initiate, right? And everybody was looking for the next round. He can propose the next question. And you suddenly you can just feel the chemistry between the team. They like each other so much more. They feel closer more. And when I talk to them, each of them, they are so much more personal to me than just somebody like a robotics doing my job. So when you're talking about partial, we are humans, are social animals, and we spend more time with our colleagues and bosses, right? Now even with our families. Now working at home probably works slightly better, but in the past, we try to spend so much time with our coworkers, and why don't we want to open ourselves? We do want friends, not in the strict sense, but someone who understands us as person holds a certain value. So be tactical about that. If someone doesn't want to open up, don't force it. But again, what is most personal is the most universal. Just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, I think Jennifer's, this is very well said. I just add a little bit. I think one is to be vulnerable ourselves first, right? So if we show that, our emotion, then others, our subordinates will feel that it might be okay to show their vulnerability as well. So very simple example is, when I joined Thermo Fisher, so the science-wise is completely different than what I was used to. And so when I, started asking people questions, at first they were surprised that, how come as a R&D director, I don't know those science, right? But once they realize that nobody knows everything, which is a point that I always bring it up, and it becomes very obvious that the team that I inherited, there's a lot of knowledge gap, but people were not willing to show, right? Because they were afraid that if this is something that people think I didn't know, then maybe I cannot have my job, right? So that's, I think, being vulnerable as leader is important. We talk about being a real leader, right? Being humble, being open, so on and so forth. So this is important, and also we need to address others' emotion, right? So only when we address their emotion, then they will feel comfortable that to follow our ideas, follow our, instructions, let's say. And to do that, so one is we need to be vulnerable at first. And second, I think we need to really show that we care about everyone as a person. So yeah, okay, let's stop there then.
All right, thank you so much. So Jessie, you're up for the next part.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, and thanks, Jennifer and Jun. First of all, I'd like to confirm with the 2 guests, so it will be okay for you to stay like 15 or 20 minutes longer, right? Because we're kind of backlog. So just give me a sense of time. It's okay, right?
Yeah, I have a hard stop at 1. So if that's okay.
Excellent, sounds good. Okay, so I'm gonna cover the next level is actually about manage the diversified. So probably I'm gonna only ask 1 or 2 questions. How to lead a diversified team with different cultures, backgrounds, and motivations. We're gonna take that one.
Well, maybe I can give a first step. So diverse team, I think in many levels that, how a good leader should behave. So that shouldn't change, right? One piece of the things that I, find very interesting is, different culture have very different standard. So Aaron Myers from INSEAD has a book called The Culture Map, which I found extremely useful. So for instance, in America, people say what they think, right? And in China, it's almost completely different, right? You almost need to sense the air to kind of, feel what that person really wants to say, right? So this kind of things is really helpful, when you realize almost like stereotyping in different country, what kind of culture that you're expecting. So that will help you to lead, right? To be, to show that you care about them, right? Their culture and so on and so forth. I think other than the culture piece that you need to kind of know what to expect, others diverse team, you really need to just being a real humble leader that show that you care, I guess. Jennifer, anything you want to add?
Right. So I see that is a great attribute you should celebrate for, have a diverse team. One of the very big challenge, I was one time working in China, is everybody looks and thinks too much alike. In China, there was a culture that, we all need to look to the boss, and we all need to answer a question rather than propose different thought. That actually is not really helpful in a working organization. Actually, in a practice. So first of all, I would like to endorse Jun on the, diversity, the value of diversity. First of all, have that humility, that understanding everybody is different. Again, think you are one of the blind men touching the elephant, right? And they are helping you to complement with different views. Don't try to be smart or outsmart them. Thinking you are as a manager is to reconcile or consolidate all the experience or opinions from them to get a common goal accomplished. Remember that graph, right? So, at almost coming to the point, at one time I was talking with one of the senior managers in the meeting, and we agreed on everything. And that's a time, like my boss stopped. He said, no, let's pause here. Let's bring someone in with probably different perspective. That gave me such a great inspiring, lesson about how you embrace different opinions. And the fact is, if you within the one meeting room, within the one team, you already have diverse opinions, then very likely you're gonna get a full picture of that thing. So you're very likely to get most optimized solutions to the task you want to do. And in the end, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different value. It doesn't matter. It's about a mission. So I think we haven't really touched on one thing, that is a goal setting, right? That needs to be clearly articulated what we're together trying to accomplish. We're not trying to be together to political games. Everyone wants to learn something, be a better version of yourself tomorrow, every day. And the way to do that is polish every one of us through doing things to accomplish the new task. And the task you need to be clearly specified. For example, it can be client, right? Customer service. It can be a major release that is due next week, and make people feel ownership, to some piece of it. There was a very famous management case talking about, when John Kennedy talking to the doorman at NASA during the 70s and asking, how do you do? What do you do? And he was saying, I'm part of, I'm sending the spaceship to the moon. That is how the doorman answered to him. No matter what his approach is, what his value proposition, make him be part of the bigger mission. I saw one of the pictures, one of the questions here, right? So because of COVID-19, there's a dramatic shift of the company's focus and the task and realignment, and people are not liking what they're doing, how to make this, work again. Again, align people with a mission. Why this is the view that company thinks that makes sense for the company, why this is making sense for everyone to go in that direction. And as a manager, you have to understand this in the first place. That's why we're saying managing up is very important. You cannot go blinded and asking your team to trust you if you don't have the vision, right? Understand the big picture and talking to your team exactly what they're doing to help this, to make this happen. And sometimes, we're all involved in very boring and very tedious, very, nonsensical jobs, and just make them feel like this is important, right? This job itself may be bad, but together we're making this important and make people mission charged, big picture charged. That is particularly important now to embrace a diversified team. So you want to distract. But I just want to add one thing, right? So sometimes there are bad team members. Certainly, they are team destroyers. Their value don't fit. And I once, I very rarely fire people, but I once did. And actually that's most talented folks I ever come across. Probably, great master degrees, great PhDs, all the Ivy Leagues, all this stuff. But he just don't play with the rest of the team. And for people like that, you need to eradicate him ASAP. Be firm and be fair and be respectful in a way. It's not about a person, it's about the performance. And there's a whole sort of theory of how to communicate the negative feedback, even to your boss, right? And it's pretty scary to talk to disagree with your boss, particularly on the serious issues. But that is the one critical skill we need to learn as well. But fundamentally, that is show respect. Show respect and talking not about a person, not about a value, but talking about the joint mission, and fire those who don't fit into that mission.
Okay, thank you, Jun and Jennifer. I think you already touched base on my following question. So what's your advice for the manager of managers? So do you have any specific advice on that?
Managers of managers is a very tricky position, right? So personally, I'm not a big fan of that because this is probably the investment banking culture. No matter how high up you are still in charge of sometimes, the front line, the client, the customer, the market, the obligations. Just purely being a manager, there's a certain risk, right? So I'll touch on that as well. You have to demonstrate, if you're just manager for the managers, you have to demonstrate you add value. You are not just another, bureaucratic middle layer to take people's credit from what they already done and trying to be your own work, right, to the boss. You have to add a value to a certain way. Either, I can think of that job like a business manager or CFO, sort of more internal functions, but that's because you have the visions from other. Remember that 3D picture. like most of us don't only focus, especially the producing managers, producing leaders, you have to focus on exactly the task you're given, right? The budget, revenue, whatever. And those people who manage people then probably can complement to say, hey, John, I know you are working on it. There's additional resource in another department who's working on something that potentially may be helpful for you, right? So you need to add a value to make sure you're not just taking people's work for granted. Otherwise, it can be very risky, when a company slim down, the managers the first ones to let go if they don't demonstrate their value. But on the other hand, I will always encourage, no matter how senior you grow, right? As you grow, don't lose touch about the market and the customers. And so even, when Jamie Dimon visited Asia, he goes to see clients himself. Right? He never just stays in office surrounded by his top executive team. He goes to see clients. He goes to talk to government officials, and with his own power. And because of that sort of direct sense making will help you to justify: are we making the big picture aligned for the company, right? So just stay internally sometimes to get you blinded into particularly some of the politics, and try always go out and breathe the fresh air from the market and the clients. That's always, I found, something not harmful.
I completely agree. So I don't have a lot of things to add. So I think particularly that having sufficient value for for the company to keep you, right, to pay you all your salaries, bonus, so on and so forth. So that's really the most important. Being a manager is not easy, right? So I think often, you're torn because you have to look at both ways, right? So look at the teams you manage, the managers you manage, and your boss, right? And where your value is at, right? So I think Jennifer talked about it very well. So I think again, being in other people's shoes, right? So being in your boss' shoes, being in the head of your company's shoes. So what do they expect you, to? What value do they expect you to bring? And how far away are you from there?
I made Zhang Huang maybe one more comment on that. So this is related, some of questions, how you manage a 2-level up. This is a really tricky question, and I would certainly advise people approach that topic with caution, at least in a formal way, right? So imagine you are the boss and your team member sort of circumvent you, talk to your boss. How would you feel? Right? So it's about attitude. It's not necessarily about you trying to steal away some thunder from your boss. It's about attitude or respect. So corporate ladder exists for its reason. Unless it's really necessary, I highly advise against. It's only on the condition that my boss advised me to do. There's many special contexts. You will encounter one sooner or later that your boss feel like, I want you to meet my boss, this and that, to do the convincing, because I feel it's too risky for me to justify that proposition if I got a bluff, right? But if you go, you are more junior than me, then probably that's okay, I can cover you up. So only with him, almost you see your boss as your alliance when you go to his boss, 2-level up, particularly because your boss must have more information than you do about, the level up, above him, what's their like, what's their don't like, what's on their thought, what's a context that will help you to fine tune and put a context in the way you approach a problem. Again, it's about a connection. Remember, we say don't try to persuade anyone without, being connected at least one thing, and your boss can help you to do that. There's a very interesting bypass to that. I certainly see the value of getting to know boss's boss and even the number one in the company. But you cannot do that through the official working channel, right? That's why you think hard trying to volunteer. So I once persuaded one of my junior team and saying, ask her to volunteer in the, JP Morgan Asia, the cancer, female cancer, whatever, the volunteer commission. And that is where you are dealing with all the different senior levels without repercussions like that. And people know each other. You're not talking about jobs. You're not talking about how you approach a societal issues on a personal level, and people know you and appreciate you. But that's not something you can go use and use directly against your boss. And neither he needs to or she care about that. So be very smart about approaching high above. So remember one principle I think I did mention, your job as a subordinate is to make your boss look good. Okay, keep that in mind. You have to make him look good to make you look good. I've seen so many politics in office, across different continents, fighting like that. It's not help you at all in the end.
Yeah, extremely very well said, Jennifer. I think, you have 2 points, and that's exactly what I did. So I completely agree that, having 2 level up connection, you need to manage it very carefully, right? So how I go approach it. So one is, I aligned with my boss that, talking, actually in this case, I was talking to his boss, right? So one is, he need to be aware of what's going on, right? And he need to think that this actually make him feel, look good before you, go out to approach his boss, right? So, you basically, I would say, you are approaching his boss to make your boss look good, right? And the second one is, okay, so on the first one, so the topics that we talked about is something that that our department as a whole can contribute, right? Because my presence, and not like personal agenda, right? But once if you can find this kind of way to reach out to a level up, then that's great. And another good path is to do volunteer work. For example, I'm in transplant field that we have a lot of events to promote transplant, for example, and our president is heavily involved. So, and I would say any volunteer in those events will have the chance to talk to the boss. So that's a very good way to build informal, personal connections. So, and 2 levels up is not always have to be like the boss, right? In a large company, it can be somebody just completely not related to what you do. But if you can, let's say if that's a person you are interested in approaching, right? To, for example, be your mentor, then think about the mentor-mentee relationship and how that person can benefit from you being the mentee, right? Even though being a mentor, I think a lot of time there is altruism involved, right? That person wants to see the young professional to succeed, but definitely keep in mind how that person can benefit as well. So that make you a good mentee. And if you can, let's say, bring fresh perspective that that person doesn't see in his or her field, then that's definitely a huge bonus, right? And a little bit more on this topic. So mentor doesn't have to be like within the company, right? So, I would strongly advocate that each of us has a committee of advisors, right? People who you think can help you in your career. They're they're genuinely interested in you getting better, right? So remember that there are like only 5 degrees of separation. So if you have a group of people who really care about you, who can help you succeed, then their connection will likely be able to help you to move up in your company. So I think the building the exposure, building the image, so they're multi-pronged approach.
Thank you so much. I think very thoughtful input and very helpful. Because of the time limitation, I probably just jump directly to the next level. Because for me, leadership is more about managing difficulties, have the vision and courage to make tough decisions. So actually, right now, we are facing the pandemic. So I'd like to know, in your mind, what's the largest challenge or difference for managers during and after COVID-19?
I think that's a very big question. If specifically for this world after the COVID, right? So I mentioned briefly about 2 things. The expedited digitalization. Many companies literally compress what they need to do in the next 3 years, moving to the cloud, just within 2 months, 3 months. And there's such an implication to that. I think the biggest question is, as each of us still early in the career, what you're doing, make sure what you're learning, what you're doing is not something to be replaced by machine in a couple of years, right? We see the labor value is going to be destroyed in the future. So making sure you retain the human part of being a manager rather than being a machine replaceable sort of processors, I think it's very important. And the second, I think particularly relevant to this audience is really the regionalization and divisions of many forces internationally. So the global consumer base synchronized market, is gone. Simply, Chinese, there's a good way of saying that, 天下合久必分，分久必合. Don't presume this is gonna continue something forever, right? So you see, there's many different reasons you can go many different sessions to understand why the geopolitics, the demographics, global aging population, the digitalization, but in the end, we are gonna probably see the rivalry between the 2 largest economies in the world, not just on the technology or IP, it's on the space rivalry, it's arms rivalry, it's a lot of things. Then in that situation, how to play that to your own strength, to your own advantage, right? And we are here in the US, you have a natural advantage of this connectivity. But how to, again, goes to the how to give feedback that people is willing to accept and act upon. That is leadership skill. That is way above the small, 3 people's team, that probably much higher level conversation. But every opportunity, every danger is opportunity. Play that to the strengths. In the banking world, banking is going to change dramatically in the next 10 years. Consulting, I think, faces similar challenges as well. Just make sure whatever we talk about, if you are a stock, right? If we talk about that signature stuff. If you are a stock, would you want to invest in yourself? What will be your return for yourself in 5 to 10 years? And make sure you invest the time, money, and efforts to make your own stock as a person grow. in its equity premium, that something will not be diminished, not be challenged by the automation, by the digital technology, by the robotics, and make your leadership shine. And in a divided world, the leadership will be evaluated more precisely than ever before.
I think that's really a take-home message, right? So, think of us as the stock. That's really, really well said, and such a good analogy. Love it. So I think, adding the R&D perspective. So R&D is really like investment, right? For, of a company. So during this kind of, crisis, the R&D could be the first to be cut. So people are scared. So I think as a leader, it's really to address their emotion, right? And be vulnerable, right? To say that, to let them know how you feel, right? And address their vulnerability, and then being inspirational, right? So what we can do to keep our job, right? What we can do to, to be, let's say, employment, to have employment security, not just job security, right? So, like Jennifer said, you work for the name on the door, but not in the name on the building. Right? So if you keep investing in yourself, then even if this company doesn't do well, or you get laid off for whatever reason, then the employment security is where it will be useful, right? That you can find a job anywhere else very easily. I think that's really, where we should strive for.
Thank you so much, Jun and Jennifer. I think just as my understanding, we're not only talking about leading a team, but also talking about how to navigate through the life and uncertainty. So I do appreciate your input. So because of the time limitation, I'm gonna hand over to the Q&A part. So because we have this open chat room, so could please Jennifer and Jun just to pick up from this chat rooms and to see which question you'd like to answer first.
Well, I'm looking at the last question, so I'm going bottom up.
Go ahead.
So the question is, could you share your moments where you felt I need to consciously reduce exposure to the technical details, even at the cost of reduced technical insight? So which is completely true. So I think a big difference between individual contributor and a manager is the individual contributor need to have a lot of area expertise, right? So the thinking could be narrow but very deep. But as a leader, what you need to have is 360 thinking, right? You need to have very broad knowledge, not only deep. So as you move up, this is actually. Let me share this screen. I think this is actually helpful. This is a slide from just Thermo Fisher. So this talk about, when you just become a manager and you move up, right? So when you just become a manager, your technical skill is still really important, and leadership skill is a small part, right? Once you move up, then your technical skills has to be like less deep, I say. So the moment that I choose to sacrifice technical insights and choose to choose more on the leadership side, I think it just it's really prioritization, right? So we all have just 24 hours a day, and what can you do with this 24 hours? What's the best outcome that can be, right? So can I help the situation better if I know a lot of technical details, or I should let other people, take on that part, and I focus on leading the team and focus on asking good questions, focus on being a catalyzer, right? Of how to make sure everyone, around me can do their job well. I don't know if that answered the question, but let me know if I need to elaborate more.
Very good. So any points to end on that, Jennifer?
I think we already touched on many aspects of that, and you only have 24 hours, right? So as a manager, unfortunately, that is trade-off. You constantly have to make. What do you want to do yourself, knowing you can probably do better than many of your team members, or you let them try and fail and make mistakes and you know, taking all the consequences, but you be a manager to hold up all these things. I think that requires a lot of judgment and a trade-off. That is how you grill yourself into a specific situation to make sure you accomplish. But, you know, again, I think I would like to tweak this to a certain degree that, you know, we haven't really touched on in details. That is, you know, the level of a macro manager. How well you want to really know the insights to guide your team to do what exactly you want them to do, right? So again, I think as a manager, that's why you are promoted to a manager. And if you ever want to be promoted again to a bigger manager, you have to focus on the objective. In the end, it doesn't matter who is in your team. In the end, it matters what is the objective you try to accomplish. And what you need to figure out is three things, right? So the future state, either it's a task or it's an annual budget, you need to do for the team, for the entire team. So move away from single details to the contribution of the entire team. What do you want trying to accomplish? And what's the current state? You know, the knowledge gap, whatever gap you have, and you do that for every individual, and leave the rest to them. They may struggle, they may tumble, but you know, that's how they potentially prove themselves to be the leadership pipeline to go, you know, follow you to grow. But you need to leave that to them and give them the guidance when they ask you to help, but don't macromanage. So this goes to, you know, we you know, I think Jun touched a lot about, you know, how to set the, how to set objective for each individual, how to evaluate them, right? And how to tell them you are not up to their job, and do that in a very prompt way. As a manager, you always, I think the sort of the most effective range of management is about, you know, 5 to 6 people. I think Jun had a chart earlier than well said about that. I once talked to, you know, very large pharmaceutical company. Banking consulting is a very different business model. We tend to have smaller teams, but in the manufacturer space, right? I once talked to a large consumer sort of pharmaceutical companies in China. It's a Johnson & Johnson, and literally the head of the sales is in charge of 2,000 people, right? So how could you manage 2,000 people? But effectively, he's only managing 5. That's it. Your bandwidth can go as dramatically, you know, diminished as you go beyond that. Because if you really understand something well enough, there's a level of limit, and there's a level of limit if you look down 2,000 people what they're doing. Unfortunately, for some industry, they are more sort of, you know, honed to skills like that than consulting and banking. But in the end, don't micromanage. Give people the objective, and give them the feedback. If they fail, tell them, right? Here's what I observed. Here's the impact on the team. Don't say personal value. Don't make a judgment. Say only facts. This is what I observed. Acknowledging this might not be the big picture. Remember, you are only one blind of that big elephant thing. This is what I observed, and this is the impact on the team, and anything you can share with me that how you are doing this, right? If there's no convincing argument, then that's a different story. But if there is, then give him the help to help him to do the job. That is literally the sort of making time allocation part needs to do. And as a producing manager, that is the toughest job on this entire management rank. You have a very senior level that only deal with people, but you have junior level only deal with the task. But working managers, you have to look at the things and you have to manage a team. Like the CTO of a company has to understand exactly how JavaScript works and keep it up to the latest trend on how blockchain evolves, and he needs to manage a team diverse globally. I sympathize that's not an easy job, but that gives you opportunity too, and that requires a serious trade-off. So how to make sure your team is strong? So cultivating a strong team is very important. If a team is really capable, then you save a lot of energy and time, right? And how you attract the best team, we're going back to the perception. People follow you because they think you can take them to succeed. Because they trust in you to spend time with you, following your vision and judgment. And it's not just about technical insights, it's about your integrity. You're about keeping their best interests in heart and making them to strive rather than you be the one to be called the leader.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Very thoughtful. And I just ask your opinion. Do you like to pick up another question in the chat room, or I think you're just taking initiative talking about another topic? But we still have like 5 to 10 minutes. So
I think we're over already.
Okay. Because there are a lot of questions remain unanswered. So if you like,
maybe I think we're seriously over time. Maybe you can, for whatever the questions, we can summarize them and later maybe find
sure.
a way.
Sounds good. Yeah, because we have the WeChat group and just send you the information. Maybe the audience could send the questions in the WeChat groups so you can give your insight.
Cool.
Okay.
Good. All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Jun. Again, also Jessie, too. Really appreciate great insights, great discussion topic. I think this is one of the few sessions that really touch on the managerial challenges, for Chinese and Chinese Americans. So, I really appreciate your time that we have that you invest in this 2 hours. So there are a lot of questions in the chat room, in the Zoom channel, also from the Eventbrite. When you sign up, we will try to make the best representation, but obviously due to time limitation, we cannot get to every single one of them. So we do have a WeChat group. If you haven't joined, please do so. The QR code is in email. If you have issues, just add me on the WeChat, COOLDW57, and I can try to add you to group manually if we reach the capacity. So feel free to use that group to address, create additional questions, additional information that you can share, you can address each other's issues, and intending to use that group, I'll try to maintain it to answer questions that's related specifically about management, about leadership for Chinese professionals. And again, thank you so much for joining this wonderful sessions. Appreciate the speakers and volunteers. And we're always looking for more volunteers for future events. If you have a topic you want to discuss, you want to have something to share, feel free to reach out to me. I'm the group owners in the WeChat group, so you know how to find me. And the next discussion topic is going to be influence. So we talk a lot about leadership now. There's going to be a bit more on the influence, on persuasion, and we're thinking sometime in June, and we'll keep you updated. Please follow our official account on the WeChat or follow our Facebook page. Those events will be posted there. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time, and have a great Saturday. Thank you.